ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Melissa DeRosa, Secretary to the Governor, Julianne Moore, and please welcome Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Before I begin, I'd like to welcome some of the special guests who are with us here today. We have Julianne Moore, who needs no introduction. Our phenomenal Lieutenant Governor and champion for women's rights, Kathy Hochul. We have State Senator Anna Kaplan. State Senator and former Cuomo administration official, Alessandra Biaggi. We have Assembly members Rebecca Seawright and Latrice Walker. And I believe if Julia Salazar is not here yet, she's just arriving. So Julia Salazar as well. Members of the governor's administration, including Alfonso David, counsel to the governor, the girl's best friend. Members of the Council on Women and Girls Steering Committee, and countless advocates, activists, and leaders who have turned out to support us here today. Thank you so much for being here. Today, under Governor Cuomo's leadership and with the support of everyone in this room, New York is at the forefront of the fight for women's rights. As the first ever female secretary to the governor, I am proud to be part of an administration that has made women's rights a top priority from day one. We passed the best paid family leave program, the first $15 minimum wage, and the strongest campus sexual assault law in the nation. And when this president took office and set his sights on rolling back women's rights to an amorphous era he believed was great, we said, no way, no how. After President Trump disbanded President Obama's Council on Women and Girls, we picked up the mantle and launched our own here in New York. Serving as the chair of the council has been one of the greatest honors of my career. The input and personal experience of the steering committee members and the contributions of the commissioners and every agency have shaped a groundbreaking policy agenda that is setting an example for the entire nation to follow. The reason female representation in decision-making is so crucial is it puts our perspective and life experience at the forefront of how policy is shaped. We don't talk about the issues in the abstract or based on hypotheticals. We've personally been overlooked and discounted as a result of our age and our gender and our appearance. We've been demeaned and objectified and harassed. We've been held back. And while venting may be cathartic, it's not enough. And so we're fighting back, not with words, but with actions resulting in real change. And this year's agenda and last year's accomplishments prove just that. As part of the Council's 2018 Women's Agenda, we passed the strongest sexual harassment laws in the nation. We expanded equal access to changing tables in public restrooms, provided free menstrual products in public schools, while at the same time providing seed money to female-led startups and removing firearms from domestic abusers. I'm extraordinarily proud of all that we've achieved, but for how far we've come, there is still so much work to do. Misogyny is still pervasive, sexual assault an epidemic, and sexual harassment a plague in our society. Earlier this month, we heard from brave women who testified in the state legislature about their experiences of abuse in hearings led by Alessandra Biaggi. This on the heels of the gut-wrenching confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh, when the voices of survivors were all but silenced by Republicans in Washington. Those hearings evoked a sense of PTSD for countless victims nationwide and served as another stark reminder that our work is nowhere near finished. And so we get back to it. The fact is, we have an administration in Washington hostile to women's rights, and which has now stacked the Supreme Court with extreme conservatives who threaten to enshrine their doctrine into the Constitution, starting with the elimination of the protections guaranteed by Roe v. Wade. Not in New York. For us, it comes down to a simple statement. All men and women are created equal and are endowed with the same rights. That's the difference between us and them. When we say we want equality for women, we mean all women, and in all ways. Reproductive justice, economic justice, and social justice. We mean for the girl who wants to study science but who needs an educational system that helps her break through gender bias to find her place in a male-dominated field. We mean for the young woman who wants to pursue a career but needs some direction and mentoring to help get her started. We mean for the working woman who wants to do her job the way a man does, without being subjected to sexual harassment, and while earning the same pay for the same work. We mean for the single mother of 3 who wants to resume her schooling, but whose unique needs require additional support to make it through. We mean for the woman in a rural county who needs better access to health care, and we mean for the executive who is facing discrimination in the boardroom. Whether a woman wants to shatter a glass ceiling or get up off the sticky floor, New York will lead the way. We will make sure that any woman willing has an even playing field and fair shot at making it, because we believe in justice for all. So this year, we're going to continue our forward progress here in New York. Today, alongside the Time's Up movement and the Council on Women and Girls, we are unveiling Governor Cuomo's 2019 Women's Agenda to lead the way in protecting women in the workplace and strengthening the rights of women all across society. We began by making history with the Reproductive Health Act a few short weeks ago. Governor Cuomo vowed to get it passed within the first 30 days of the new session, and that is exactly what we did. The RHA codified the protections of Roe v. Wade into law so that whatever happens in Washington, women's rights are protected here in New York. Conservatives in Washington, starting with the president right on down, are spreading graphic misinformation to attack and undermine a woman's rights to make her own reproductive health decision. In New York, we say, bring it on. We will not back down to lies and fear-mongering from anyone, no matter the collar they wear or the office they hold. We will always stand up for women's fundamental reproductive rights and for the precedent it was set in 46 years ago. And undeterred, we will continue our fight for reproductive justice. Reproductive health is fundamental to women's equality. It affects our families, our careers, our health, and our entire lives. There's nothing more personal or life-altering than the ability to conceive and making the choice about when to conceive. It is something facing every woman across the country, regardless of age, race, or socioeconomic status. It impacts our families, our health, and our careers. As someone who's currently facing these life-altering decisions, I know firsthand the toll they take, emotionally and financially. And we should be doing everything we can to help lessen that burden for all women. This year, we will take a giant step forward in this fight by improving access to IVF and fertility preservation coverage. Because let's be honest, if money stood in the way of men choosing when to have children, insurance would have long ago covered any procedure available. We will mandate that large group insurance providers cover IVF and will also require insurers to cover egg freezing services for women facing certain health conditions. And this year, we will pass new protections to combat maternal mortality and reduce racial disparities in New York. We will continue our fight for social justice. We will honor the work of trailblazers like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and finally pass the Equal Rights Amendment once and for all. We will advance reforms to deliver justice to domestic violence survivors and outlaw the horrific act of revenge porn. And this year, we will also ensure justice for survivors of sexual violence. For a variety of social and psychological reasons, survivors often do not immediately report their assaults. Rape is the most underreported crime, and 63% of sexual assaults are never reported to police. Currently, there's a 5-year statute of limitations in place for second and third degree rape charges, meaning that after the arbitrary time limit expires, survivors can no longer seek justice under the law. That is unacceptable. This year, for every girl, for every college student, and every nameless woman tormented by this criminal act, we propose completely eliminating the statute of limitations for all rape, so cases for every survivor can seek justice. And we are joining forces with Time's Up to increase protections against harassment in the workplace. We will make it easier for employees who face sexual harassment in the workplace to hold their employers accountable under the New York human rights law. We will mandate that even if an employee signs an NDA, he or she can still come forward about harassment or discrimination in the workplace. And we will require all employers to notify their employees about sexual harassment policies so workers know their rights. We will continue our fight for economic justice. We propose investing more in childcare, expanding the Empire State After School Program with an additional $10 million to create over 6,000 new slots in high-need targeted communities, and continuing our historic investment in computer science and education through Smart Start. We propose a community college pilot program for single parents that provides customized support, including on-campus childcare at participating SUNY and CUNY schools. And we will fight for diversity in leadership. We are setting a goal of ensuring 50% of appointees to major state boards and college councils to be female. And this year, we're launching a task force on representation and corporate transparency to determine the best ways to ensure corporate transparency on issues like workforce diversity, pay equity, and diversity in corporate leadership. And we continue the push for pay equity. At 89 cents on the dollar, New York leads the nation, but that 11-cent gap is still way too high. To ensure real pay equity, we are going to take a number of steps. The reality is that when people interview for jobs, the question of salary history guides future salary job offers. But the truth is that women make less than our male counterparts, and basing salary on previous employment rather than the merits of what's required in our next job continues a cycle where women are being held back while men continue to propel ahead. This year, we will take that head on by passing a salary history ban that prohibits all employers who do business in New York, public and private, from asking prospective employees about their salary history and compensation. In addition, we will also expand the definition of equal pay for equal work to require equal pay on the basis of race, ethnicity, and gender, and to close any loopholes employers try to use to pay women less. We will expand the requirement that equal pay be provided for all substantially similar work. Economic justice without gender equality isn't justice at all. This is a bold, aggressive agenda, but the Cuomo administration never shies away from a fight. We will do everything in our power to level the playing field and lift women up so every New Yorker can realize their full potential. Together, we will remove barriers, real and perceived, for success and continue to make New York a model of equality and opportunity for the entire nation to follow. We've already seen with the passage of RHA the power of collective advocacy and how strong we are when we refuse to take less than we deserve. We will take up each and every fight with the same vigor and to the same result. I know how demoralizing the last 2 years under President Trump have been for many of us, but it was also the empowering wake-up call we needed. We turned complacency into action, and that action has delivered results. We found our voice and our backbone, and we won't stop now. In many ways, we're stronger than ever before. It's true that elections have consequences, but they also come every 2 and 4 years, and when they do, we have the ability to literally overthrow the government. When we speak with our votes, we are the difference. We saw the consequence of the 2016 election in the 2018 results. We saw it nationally when we elected a record number of women to Congress, and we saw it in New York when we added 5 more women to the Senate and 4 to the Assembly. We saw it when Barbara Underwood became the first female Attorney General, followed by her successor, Tish James. And we see it in Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. With the added representation of women's voices in positions of power and with the support of strong advocates in this room, we together are leading the way forward. And today I have the opportunity to introduce one of those partners and champions for women's rights. She is not only an Academy and Emmy Award winner and one of the greatest actresses of our time, pretty weak resume if you ask me. She has also been a fierce advocate for political and social causes. She sits on the board of Planned Parenthood, has spoken out against gun violence, against child victims abuse, giving special support to the campaign launched by the students of Parkland, Florida, and on and on. She was an early supporter of the Time's Up movement against sexual harassment, a true force to be reckoned with, organizing for safe, fair, and dignified work for all women in all jobs in all industries, who have achieved a number of big victories in a very short period of time. So it is my pleasure to welcome a champion for women's rights, Julianne Moore.
Wow. Thank you for that. I'm going to have her write my resume. Actually, I think I'm okay here. I felt too tall that way. Well, thank you for that beautiful and really comprehensive speech. It was so wonderful to hear that this morning, and I'm so thrilled to be standing here today as a member, as a representative of Time's Up, and as a female citizen of New York State. So I want to thank Governor Cuomo for the advances he's made towards true equality in all aspects of a woman's life. First, by passing the Reproductive Health Act. Yes. And by continuing to promote women's issues with the 2019 Justice Agenda. So when I first joined Time's Up, I called my senator's office to gain clarity on the statute of limitations for rape and sexual assault in my home state. And I was shocked to find out that New York State had a statute of limitations on child sexual assault claims and a statute of limitations on second and third degree rape and assault charges. But as of last week, the Child Victims Act has been signed into law, finally allowing victims of child sexual assault to seek justice. I am so excited about this. This is absolutely amazing, and as you all know, it has been a long time coming. So I'm very, very grateful and also excited and thankful to Governor Cuomo for partnering on the Time's Up New York Safety Agenda, which includes eliminating statute of limitations on second and third degree rape and assault, along with other critical safety measures. We are so grateful to the governor for standing with Time's Up on these important measures and urge the legislature to pass the agenda as quickly as possible. And personally, I would like to see New York State become the safest place in the nation for women and children. And it looks like we are on our way. So it is now my great pleasure to introduce a lifelong advocate for women and families across the state, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul.
Okay, do I want to be tall or short? Decisions. Hello, friends. What a wonderful gathering to see each and every one of you. And we've been through a lot of battles together, and I want to thank you for joining us here today as we continue to fight for the rights of women and children. And I want to thank Julianne Moore, first of all, for lending her incredible cachet and credibility to our event, and a little star power never hurts an event like this, but also your courageous behavior in calling out people who harassed you. And I read that you weren't even sure it was constitute harassment. You thought that's just what you had to endure to get a job in your industry. And because you and so many other members of the Time's Up movement have stood up not just for yourselves, but for countless others who don't have your stature and your voice, I say thank you for that courage as well. Let's give another round of applause, Julianne Moore. And to Melissa DeRosa, yes, another first under the Cuomo administration, but incredible leadership that you've displayed in championing these causes, and to know that you're at the helm of this particular initiative, and I'm so happy to work closely with you. I want to thank you for all you do for the women and families of the state of New York. Let's give Melissa another round of applause. You know, and to the younger women in this room, I guess I don't count myself in that anymore. That's all right. State of mind. You know, it's because of you and all of us working together that we've finally started to achieve real progress that Melissa laid out and Julianne put an exclamation point on. Success that just seems so far away, so it's there but out of our reach because of the composition of the New York State Senate. And my head is spinning when I think about what we've accomplished together, the governor, the assembly, the Senate, and the advocates all pulling together just in the last month alone. So we have lived to see a real live history. And I'm so proud to have been on that journey with many of you. And we talk about passing the RHA, the Reproductive Health Act. That was to be the last of the 10-point women's equality agenda. Remember, we got through 9, but that was that elusive number 10 that we just couldn't get over the finish line until this year. But so we're all done, right? Women are equal in New York, it's all set? No, I didn't think so. We're not done at all. And I don't think we're done with respect to that. I think you'd agree with me. Does anyone believe we've achieved true social justice at this point? No, little ways to go. True economic justice, anyone? True racial justice? True gender justice? But we're on our way, and that's the good news, because there's a lot of states that don't have the leadership like we have with Governor Cuomo, who actually don't give a damn about these issues. Here in New York State, we do. So while we cheered, yes. So I'm reminded what happened when we had these great successes. I do a flashback to the work of our early suffragettes. And in 1917, we all celebrated, 2 years ago now, the great 100th anniversary of women attaining the right to vote. And in 1920, which we're going to be celebrating next year, we hit another milestone, the centennial of women getting the right to vote for the nation. So at the time, the women of those days thought that, hey, we're done now too, this is great, right? No, they didn't either. They said, we still have unfinished business, even back in 1917 and in 1920. So instead of resting on their laurels, they took up the new mantle. And in 1923, to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the gathering of women and some enlightened men in Seneca Falls in 1848, in honor of those women, Alice, Paul, and another group of brave individuals said, how about the Equal Rights Amendment? Let's make sure that the Constitution protects our rights. We are equal in the eyes of the law in our nation, equal as men. So that's what they did back then. They didn't say we're done once we got the right to vote. They took on this new challenge. And so, like them, that is exactly where we find ourselves today. Great accomplishments. We could stop now, rest on our laurels. But no, that's not who we are, is it? We're New Yorkers. We love a good fight, right? So the torch that was passed from 1848 to the early suffragettes at the turn of the last century that was now passed to us, we're not just going to pass it on to the next generation without making it glow even brighter. And that is the challenge that we accept today by accepting what Melissa laid out for us, the continuation of the women's equality agenda. And so to channel the spirit of those audacious, brave, some thought they were crazy. Alice Paul was literally locked up in an institution because they thought she was insane for what she did. We also now know we have a responsibility. For we are their voices to continue to demand equality. We are their legs to continue marching in the streets for justice. And in this era, we are their fingers because we are poised to text and engage in social media to build support for our cause. But not only does our legacy of New Yorkers command us to take these actions, so does the era we live in. And Melissa touched upon the experience we now have of 2 years under Donald Trump, the Trump era. That is the era we live in, an era where we have Supreme Court justices, and I pray to God Ruth Bader Ginsburg is feeling good today. I pray for her health every morning. But the justices we already have that have been appointed, they're scary. I mean, they didn't get on the bench until they committed that they were against Roe v. Wade. That is the litmus test they had to pass. So we have a misogynistic president. We have an unpredictable, actually I should say a very predictable Supreme Court because we know what they're going to do. We have a Senate filled with conservatives. And thank God for Nancy Pelosi, we took back the House. I've never seen such incredible leadership. So that's the era we live in. And if you think I'm exaggerating how bad it is, did you know that the female governor of Iowa just said she supported a constitutional amendment to roll back Roe v. Wade? Yeah, if you live in New York State, you think everything's all good? Yeah, go to a couple other states once in a while. You'll appreciate what we have. So, you know, we talk about what we have to do. It is our responsibility now to enact everything Melissa outlined as our agenda, but I'm going to put a special exclamation point on the cause that was started back in 1923, and that is the final passage in the state of New York and ultimately the nation of the Equal Rights Amendment. So I'm going to ask you, does this sound really radical to you? Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged in the United States or any state on account of sex. That's not scary. I mean, Phyllis Schlafly and all the other crazies who stopped this in its track back in 1982, they predicted, oh my God, this is going to lead to gay marriage and men and women using the same restrooms and women in the military and all these other horrible things. Guess what, Phyllis? They happened, and it made us a better nation because those things happened. We don't fear this. We say, bring it on. But luckily, we have champions in Washington like Carolyn Maloney, who, if you do not realize, she is related to Alice Paul. So this is also, yes, it is. Look, ask, she'll tell you the whole story. She was my roommate in Congress. I know all her story and her secrets. Sorry, Carolyn. But you know what? This is our opportunity to really achieve true equality, right? We can get this done. Because what achieving equality means today is slightly different than it meant back when women first proposed this. That was an era when the idea of voting was so radical, and they just were able to accomplish that. But we see a new generational approach to the ERA. This is what we call the new era ERA, okay? This is the Trump era ERA. It's evolved in many ways that reflects our updated priorities, that it gives the intersectional lens. We look at equality through the intersectional lens of gender, sex, class, race, orientation, identity. Something that can be achieved at home and in the workplace, championing the causes that we talked about here today. Because every woman still sees unfair practices when she gets up in the morning and goes to her job. Is that not true, ladies and gentlemen? Well, ladies. The gentlemen see it in their families. Practices and policies that perpetrate discrimination where women and men and girls and boys are denied equal rights. We see it in the lack of access to affordable child care, the unreasonable cost of in vitro fertilization, the prevalence of healthcare disparities affecting rural and urban parts of our state, biases in the workplace and in the schools. It's ingrained in institutions, and rather than elevating every member of society, it poses barriers to equality. We see it here and we feel it every single day. So anyone who questions the relevancy of the ERA in the 21st century, I say you're wrong. It is more relevant today than it ever has been in a generation and the generations before. Because we now need to make sure, because of the era we live in and the challenges we face, that we enshrine the language that is missing from our Constitution, and we do it today, we do it in New York, and we do it in the rest of the nation, and we do it this year. Let's get this done. So I'll conclude by saying, yes, this era demands our advocacy, but it's not just for New York. as we've often been called to do, the causes, whether it's promoting gay rights, birthplace of gay rights here in New York, environmental rights, labor rights, women's rights, civil rights. We have a moral responsibility, not just as New Yorkers, to save our state and take it to the next level. We also have to save the country. That's on our shoulders. That is the call we have answered throughout our history. That's what we're being asked to do today. So we must lead our nation out of darkness and into light, carrying that torch that was passed to us that we now are entrusted with. Now more than ever, this era demands a new era ERA battle. And I don't know about you, but I'm up for this fight. Are you up for this fight? I'm up for this fight. I know the governor's up for this fight. I know Melissa DeRosa is up for this fight. I know Julianne Moore is up for this fight. Are you? I'm up for this fight. I say bring it on. And together, we'll fight for not just to honor the legacy of our foremothers, but you're doing it not just for your kids, but your kids' kids and your kids' kids. That is the importance of what we're talking about today. And I thank every one of you for joining with us and Governor Cuomo, his entire administration, as we lead not just the state forward, but we lead America forward to protect the rights of women in this nation. Thank you very much. Let's get on that battle together. Let's get out there and fight together.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's program.
Thank you for joining us.